3 names. 3 eras. One move that nobody expected. When Reggie Miller and Cheryl Miller publicly aligned themselves with Caitlin Clark, it didn't feel like a casual show of support. It felt strategic, calculated, almost deliberate. Because let's be honest, legends don't attach their names lightly. Reggie built his reputation on precision, on timing, on knowing exactly when to take the shot. And Cheryl? She's one of the fiercest protectors of women's basketball history. She doesn't co-sign just anyone. So when both of them stepped into Clark's corner, it wasn't random. It was a signal. Clark isn't just a talented rookie. She's a disruptor. Her arrival in Indiana didn't just boost ticket sales. It shifted conversations. It challenged narratives. It forced people inside and outside the WNBA to rethink what women's basketball could become. And that kind of disruption attracts 2 types of people: critics and power players. Reggie and Cheryl fall into the second category. Because here's what most fans are missing. This isn't about nostalgia. It's not about supporting the next generation. It feels bigger than that. It feels like positioning. Legends don't step back into the spotlight unless something meaningful is happening behind the scenes. And lately, there's been a quiet shift in Indiana. Meetings, appearances, public comments that seem casual on the surface, but layered underneath. If you've been watching closely, you can feel it. Basketball history doesn't move loudly at first. It moves subtly. Quiet conversations, small alliances, strategic visibility. Then suddenly, everything changes. And what makes this moment different is the timing. Clark is at the peak of cultural attention. The WNBA is experiencing record viewership. Indiana is back at the center of the basketball map. And 2 icons just stepped forward at the exact same moment. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. This didn't start with a press conference. It started with geography. Indiana isn't just another basketball state. It's a basketball identity. High school gyms packed on Friday nights. College banners hanging like family heirlooms. Generations raised on jump shots and buzzer beaters. And sitting right at the center of that history is Reggie Miller. For nearly 2 decades, he wasn't just the face of the Pacers. He was Indiana basketball. His battles at Madison Square Garden. His clutch playoff moments. His loyalty to one franchise. That kind of legacy doesn't fade. It embeds itself into the culture. Now fast forward. Caitlin Clark arrives in Indiana, and suddenly the fever become must-watch television. Arenas that once had empty sections start selling out. Road games feel like home games. Opposing teams move matchups to larger venues just to handle demand. That's not normal rookie impact. That's market-shifting energy. And here's the part that matters. It's happening in the same state that built Reggie's legend. You don't think that connection carries weight? Clark didn't just land anywhere. She landed in the one place where basketball still feels sacred. Where fans understand shooters. Where long-range confidence isn't criticized. It's celebrated. It's almost poetic. And when you zoom out, it becomes clear that Indiana isn't just the backdrop of this alliance. It's the foundation. Because markets matter. Ownership matters. Media presence matters. And Indiana suddenly has all 3 lined up at once. An NBA legend with broadcasting influence, a women's basketball pioneer with deep respect across the sport, and the most talked about young star in the game. That's leverage. Money follows attention. Always has. And Clark brought attention in waves. Ticket revenue. Merchandise spikes. TV numbers climbing higher than executives projected. Corporate sponsors suddenly eager to invest. The state that once revolved around Reggie is now orbiting Clark. And if you think veteran icons don't notice momentum like that, think again. When a market heats up, power players don't watch from the sidelines. They position themselves early. Here's where things get uncomfortable. Caitlin Clark didn't just bring excitement. She exposed a gap. When her games started breaking attendance records, people celebrated. When broadcast numbers spiked, analysts called it a moment. When arenas had to upgrade venues just to host her, it felt historic. But behind that celebration, executives were doing math. Because when one rookie shifts revenue that dramatically, it forces bigger questions. Who benefits? Who controls the growth? And who owns the narrative? Clark's impact wasn't subtle. Merchandise flew off shelves. National networks reshuffled programming. Corporate brands that once overlooked women's basketball suddenly wanted in. That kind of attention creates pressure. Pressure on league leadership. Pressure on media partners. Pressure on long-standing structures that were built before this level of spotlight existed. And here's where it gets interesting. Veteran legends understand business in a way rookies don't have to, yet. Reggie Miller has been inside the NBA machine. He's seen how television deals are structured. He knows how media partnerships are negotiated. He's sat at tables where influence quietly shapes outcomes. Cheryl Miller has watched women's basketball fight for legitimacy for decades. She understands what happens when momentum isn't protected. She's seen growth moments fizzle because leadership wasn't aligned. So when Clark's arrival created a financial shockwave, it didn't just look like hype. It looked like opportunity. Not just for the league, but for anyone smart enough to move early. And if you've been enjoying this breakdown so far, make sure you're subscribed. Because these are the conversations most outlets won't touch, the strategy behind the headlines, not just the highlights. Now here's the real question. What happens when generational momentum meets generational experience? You don't get a photo op. You get planning. And that's exactly what this feels like. People see Reggie Miller and think nostalgia. They remember the choke sign at Madison Square Garden. The daggers. The playoff battles. The loyalty to one franchise. But that's only half the story. The real power Reggie carries today isn't just in what he did on the court. It's in where he sits now. Broadcast booths. Network meetings. Production calls. Executive conversations that fans never hear. For years, he's been one of the NBA's most recognizable voices on national television. That means relationships. That means credibility. That means influence in rooms where decisions are shaped long before the public hears about them. He understands how narratives are built. He knows how stars are positioned. He knows what makes networks invest. And he knows how quickly momentum can be lost if it isn't handled correctly. So when someone like that aligns himself with Caitlin Clark, it's not sentimental. It's strategic awareness. Reggie isn't the type to jump into chaos. He's calculated, quiet, observant. If he sees long-term potential, he moves carefully. And let's be real, Clark represents something the basketball world hasn't seen before. A player who blends deep-range shooting, cultural buzz, and media magnetism all at once. She pulls attention from traditional NBA fans, college fans, and entirely new audiences. That kind of cross-market pull is rare. Reggie understands market gravity. He knows when a player isn't just popular, but scalable. And when scalable talent appears in the same state that built your legacy, that's not something you ignore. But here's where it shifts again. Because if Reggie represents media power and business leverage, Cheryl represents something even deeper. And her involvement may be the strongest signal of all. If Reggie brings influence, Cheryl brings authority. And not the loud kind, the earned kind. Before the WNBA existed, before primetime broadcasts, before women's basketball had corporate backing, Cheryl Miller was dominating the sport at a level people still struggle to process. She didn't just play. She redefined expectations. And when you've spent decades protecting the integrity of women's basketball, you don't casually attach yourself to hype. You study it. You test it. You challenge it. Cheryl has never been afraid to call out narratives she believes are shallow. She's seen media cycles build stars too quickly and tear them down just as fast. She's watched young players get overwhelmed by pressure the system wasn't prepared to support. So her alignment with Caitlin Clark sends a very specific message. It says this isn't temporary. It says this isn't a media bubble. It says there's something sustainable here. And that matters. Because Cheryl isn't just respected by fans. She's respected by coaches, executives, former players, and insiders who rarely agree on anything. When she signals belief, people pay attention. But here's the subtle shift most viewers miss. Cheryl's career has always been about building, developing, elevating the next level. She's coached, she's mentored, she's advocated. If she's stepping into alignment now, it suggests vision, not applause. Vision. And when you combine that with Reggie's network and Clark's momentum, you don't just get support. You get infrastructure forming. 3 different generations. 3 different skill sets. 1 shared state. And suddenly the question isn't, why are they together? It becomes, what are they preparing for? At this point, it stops feeling symbolic. Starts feeling strategic. Because when icons from different eras align at the exact moment the market is shifting, history tells us one thing: something is being built. But what? There are 3 possibilities that make real sense. The first is media. Think about it. Reggie understands television. Cheryl understands storytelling in women's basketball. Clark commands attention like few athletes in the country right now. A digital platform. A production company. A player-driven basketball show that isn't filtered through traditional league narratives. Athletes are no longer waiting for networks to tell their stories. They're building their own platforms. And if there was ever a trio capable of launching something powerful in that space, it's this one. The second possibility is development. Indiana already breathes basketball. Now imagine an elite training pipeline, one that bridges boys and girls programs, led by a family whose name already carries generational weight, alongside the most influential young star in the women's game. That's not just a camp. That's a movement. Especially at a time when youth sports are becoming more commercialized and more competitive than ever. Whoever controls development pipelines often controls the future of the sport. And then there's the third possibility: ownership or investment. This one is quieter, but potentially bigger. Women's sports valuations are rising. Investors are circling. Expansion conversations are happening. And the smartest former players aren't just joining broadcast panels anymore. They're buying in. If Clark represents the next wave of player power, and the Millers represent legacy credibility, that combination could be positioning for something long-term. Something structural. Not just influence. Control. Because here's the shift happening across sports right now. Athletes are realizing they don't have to just play inside the system. They can build new ones. And when that mindset connects across generations, it becomes dangerous, in a powerful way. But there's one more layer most people aren't talking about. This isn't just business. It's power realignment. Here's the uncomfortable truth. For decades, leagues controlled the spotlight. Networks controlled the narrative. Players performed inside structures they didn't design. That model is changing. Slowly at first. Then all at once. We've seen NBA players launch production companies. NFL stars build media brands. Athletes investing in ownership stakes instead of just endorsement deals. The power is drifting, from institutions to individuals. Now look at this trio again. Reggie understands the league system from inside. Cheryl understands the fight women's basketball endured to even get a seat at the table. Clark represents the first wave of players entering a women's league with massive pre-built fame and leverage. That combination isn't accidental. Clark didn't enter the WNBA quietly. She arrived with a college following that translated instantly. Cameras were already pointed at her before she stepped onto a professional floor. That's different from past eras. And when players walk into leagues with leverage, negotiations feel different. Media coverage feels different. Revenue conversations feel different. This is where veteran guidance becomes critical. Because sudden fame can be isolating. Sudden influence can be overwhelming. And sudden money can create tension behind the scenes that fans never see. Legends who've survived decades in the sport know how to navigate that. If Reggie and Cheryl are stepping closer now, it suggests they see something worth protecting. Not just Clark the player. Clark the symbol. The symbol of a new economic era in women's basketball. The symbol of market validation. The the symbol of bargaining power shifting toward athletes who can generate undeniable revenue. That's bigger than a partnership. That's structural change. And structural change rarely announces itself loudly. It builds quietly until it's impossible to ignore. Indiana just happens to be the stage. Here's what makes this moment different. It's not just three names trending at the same time. It's alignment. A Hall of Fame shooter who understands media power. A pioneer who helped build women's basketball from the ground up. And a generational star whose presence alone shifts revenue, ratings, and attention. That's not nostalgia meeting hype. That's legacy meeting leverage. Whatever they're building, whether it's media, development, ownership, or something no one has predicted yet, the signal is clear. The future of basketball may not belong exclusively to leagues anymore. It may belong to players who understand their value. Clark represents the next era of athlete influence. Reggie and Cheryl represent the wisdom of surviving multiple eras. Together, that's not just collaboration. That's preparation. And if this really is the beginning of a player-driven shift in women's basketball, we're watching the early stages of something historians will point back to. Moments like this don't feel massive at first. They feel subtle. Then suddenly, the sport looks different. So now I want to hear from you. What do you think they're building? Is this media power? Ownership strategy? A new movement inside women's basketball? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them. If you enjoyed this kind of deep breakdown, hit like so more people see it. And subscribe if you want analysis that goes beyond the headlines and into the strategy behind the scenes. Because if this alliance turns into what it looks like it might, you'll want to say you saw it coming.